Give a notice of a regular meeting of the City of Friendswood-Planning and Zoning Commission to be held Thursday, February 18th, 2016 at 7 p.m. in Council Chambers, City Hall, located at 910 South Friendswood Drive, Friendswood, Texas. Call our meeting to order. Do we have any communications from the public? Yes, Skip.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Skip Evans. I'm representing the Community Economic Development Committee. At our meeting, we had put together a statement, which we'd like to read to you, that the CEDC concurs with the proposed changes by the Planning and Zoning Commission pertaining to the city's permitted use table as they relate to the city's downtown district and the future vision of downtown. More specifically, prohibiting several NAICS uses within the city's downtown district zoning category, including Use 447, gas stations, Use 493, warehousing and storage, Use 532, rental and leasing services, Use 8111, automotive repair and maintenance, and Use 8112, automotive body, paint, interior, and glass repair. As far as the existing businesses are concerned, currently allowed in the downtown district, those existing uses would be protected until the use is changed to a conforming or allowed use or abandoned for 12 months or more. They would then become non-conforming uses and would not be allowed to expand. In addition, if the structure they occupy is damaged by more than 50%, they would be able to continue the use and rebuild the structure, provided that the structure meets zoning regulations in place at the time it is rebuilt. So it's essentially, we support what want to let you know that we totally agree, and it was a unanimous vote by the CEDC on that recommendation there.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, Skip. Anyone else? Yes. Just give your name and.
It's Gary Kay. I'm also with the Community and Economic Development Committee. Just wanted to reinforce what Skip had to say. We are behind that. I remember, I think at council, there was some confusion about whether or not existing businesses were going to be somehow forced out. I think what you've done is written broadly enough that they will be protected unless, even if they sell the business, it seems like. And I think that's what the confusion was about. We understand that in our group. And again, want to reinforce we are 100% behind that position. Also, I want to talk a little bit about the proposed ordinance, and I think you're going to be talking about that tonight. We're happy that you took a look at any overlap in possible ordinances that are already on the books. Be interested to see what you have to say about that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Do you like to address us now? No?
No, they have their, they have an item on the agenda.
Okay, all right. We'll wait
If it's
then.
okay, they can.
Good. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, then we'll go on to our consent agenda and approval of our minutes for the meeting held February 1st, 2016. Do I have a motion? I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I see it to be unanimous. Item 4, consideration of possible action regarding the final plat of Willowick Estates, a plat of 0.959 acres, lots 2, 3, 4, 23, and 24 of the unrecorded Hoover subdivision in the Sarah McKissick League, abstract 151, Galveston County, Texas. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the final plat of the Willowick Estates.
A motion
With notes.
with notes. Have a motion to approve with notes. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
And I have a second. Any discussion? Aubrey, would you like to refresh our memory on this?
Yes, sir. This is actually, it's a short form final plat, so this is the first time you've seen this one. It is combining two lots. They're the two lots facing Willowick. They've never been platted before. The lot that's included in the plat that's fronting 518 wanted 5 feet from the adjacent property to be able to expand their parking lot in the future. So changing the configuration of those lots required them to do a plat, but it's a one-step process, and we'll get that plat recorded after it's approved.
And would it be accurate to say that what we're doing here also creates a little bit more of a blocking of these lots so that perhaps they're larger and therefore more usable?
Yeah, they are combining two lots, and they are both zoned downtown districts, so it does make it more developable.
Any further discussion? Yes.
Just, I haven't seen this, mic on? Mic is on. I've never seen this before. Is there a reason we have to list the bank, like you've asked here, add Prosperity Bank as one of the comments? Why is
Yeah.
that done?
They're a lien holder.
The lien holder, thank you.
Yes. Mhm.
Any other discussion, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Show it to be unanimous. Moving on to item number 5, consideration and possible action regarding the final plat of Friendswood Complex, a tract of 1.66 acres of land in lots 2 and 3 of the Harvey Stout subdivision, lots 6, 7, and 8, inclusive in Block 2, Friendswood subdivision, Galveston County, Texas, being recorded in volume 315, page 79 of the county deed records in the office of the county clerk of Galveston, Texas. Do I have a motion? I have a motion to approve. I have a motion to approve, subject to staff comments. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Aubrey, you want to start us out again?
Yes, we've seen a preliminary plat on this. This is a final plat. This is the Roberts Business Park, the existing building there. There was a tract that was carved out of that, and they're basically combining this all into one lot.
Sel, would you like to speak to us as to where you're ultimately headed with this, if you like?
Sure. There is a proposed 20,000 square feet building, one-story and two-story scheme that we've developed. We're intending to submit a site plan and a building plan that consisting of 5,000 square feet phase 1. And with part of phase 1, we will be correcting the deficiency in parking requirements for the existing Robert office building, which has a second level. The parking spaces were never addressed. So phase 1 will consist of addressing that deficiency plus adding improvements.
Fantastic. Any questions for Sal? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. I show it to be unanimous. Item 6, consideration of possible action regarding recommendation to extend the specific use permit for Tires by Design located at 3516 FM 526, ordinance number 2014-13. Do I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? I have a motion to approve and a second. Discussion? Aubrey, you want to?
Yes, sir. This ordinance, the specific use permit was approved in 2014. I think the owners is building another location and ran into some hiccups over there, so it's just been delayed a little bit. He is here to answer any questions that you might have. This is a specific use permit. This is a recommendation from P&Z, and it will be on council's agenda on March 7th to actually approve the 2-year extension.
Great. Would the owner like to speak to us? Give us any update? Sure. Come on. Just state your name, please.
My name is Martin Walsh. I just want to give you some feedback on why we've hit a bit of a delay. We put up a store in Nassa Road 1 in Seabrook, and while building the thing, we got sort of 95% complete on it, and then we were informed by the fire marshal at the time that we needed a booster pump to be put into the system, which wasn't explained to us up front, and that actually the building was approved up front. So it cost us a further sort of $250,000 and a complete alteration to the building, and this pump had to be specially built. So it set back the whole project sort of 6 months, which is obviously implicated going forward. We just want to make sure the stores get up and running properly. So that's why we've asked for the extension, if that's okay with you guys. So, yeah.
Thank you for the update.
All right, thank you.
Aubrey, since a lot of our commissioners weren't here when we did this site plan, would you like to give them a little bit of an overview of some of the extremities of this and the actions we took to make this work?
Yes, it was a unique site because, one side of the property was the entrance to an apartment complex. And so it was a private road. And there was some landscaping, screening, requirements there that were somewhat extraneous. So they ended up getting a variance, for, I think, the width of the landscape buffer, and I think we actually ended up changing an ordinance as well to reduce those landscaping requirements when it's adjacent to a private road or a public road, or any kind of like ditch, canal, or something that's at least 30 feet in width.
Right.
So,
To me, it was a really good example of where you've got an ordinance that really has value in 90% of the cases, but in this one, it was holding this fellow up from doing something that was reasonable. And so in this case, we went in and basically changed an ordinance, got a variance, and it took a little while, but we got him there. It's not the kind of ordinance you would just want to erase from the books, because it does have a lot of use 90% of the time, but in that case, it just didn't work. So I thought it was some of our better work this last year. Well, that being said, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Item 7, consideration and possible action regarding a recommendation to City Council regarding a personal care facility to be located at 505 North Clear Creek Drive. Do I have a motion?
That's one way to kill it.
Come on.
Motion to approve, subject to
All
staff
right.
comments.
I've got a motion to approve with staff comments and a second. Tony, you got comments for us?
Probably better asking, starting
Oh,
over here.
yeah, Aubrey, bring us up to speed. Tell us not only where they're at on this, but also the inflections of state law that are tangent to it as well, if you would.
yes. So this is a personal care facility, and this is actually, I think, it's a pretty rare application for us, but the owners of the facility are here to answer any questions and to explain, their plans. I think, so the compliance memo outlines some requirements from the Fire Marshal's Office and Public Works, which those are pretty standard comments. The owners are aware of those those requirements that are going to be required when they actually go to start building, to change the interior of that building. They are proposing, it's a personal care facility they're going to care for elderly people. It's an existing home. They're not going to make any changes to the exterior of the home. The site plan on there did show, their parking. It's going to be behind fences. They accounted for their trash areas, which their trash will be picked up like any residential area, on the street with everybody else's. They did provide a copy of their state application. It's a chicken before the egg situation with the state licensing. The state requires, certain approvals from the city before they will process their license. And, there's hefty fees and a process once they get to the state. So we have their application, a copy of it. Once they get their approval, we'll get, the copies of their licenses and things like that. And issue them actually a certificate of occupancy. So, again, this is a recommendation. City Council will have this on their agenda for March 7th for approval as well. And this facility currently is going to have 6 residents and 2 staff members. And as far as, so our zoning ordinance has a definition in it of personal care facility as caring for anybody, 4 people or more. Basically, you're providing them basic care, cooking for them and things like that. There is a federal statute that protects these uses with 6 residents and 2 staff members. So, and all those links were provided in your backup material for the state licensing and all that.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second. What about discussion? Yeah.
Aubrey, is there an HOA still in existence down there? And is this in compliance with the HOA deed restrictions?
That's one of the items that we've been discussing, and they may be able to address that more. I know they were trying to get in touch with their HOA. They talked to several of their neighbors, and they could probably give you more information on that.
Good.
John Polvino,
Chris Barton.
Chris Barton. And just so everybody knows, we're not part of any large organization, any large group. We're just Chris and John. We're not part of any large company or anything like that. So the question was about the HOA. Yes, there is an HOA. It's very inactive. In fact, we did not even get a copy of the HOA regulations when we closed down the house like we normally should. That didn't even happen. We have been in search of the HOA president. We've talked to 5 of our immediate neighbors, and Aubrey was kind enough to give us a copy of the most recent, I guess, paperwork that detailed who the HOA president and the treasurer were. And we did call, and we did stop by, and we left a message, and there was nobody home. We did do that twice. The 5 neighbors that are immediately next to our property, behind us on either side and across the way, they actually didn't think that person was the HOA president, but they didn't actually know who the HOA president was.
But we're still looking.
We're still looking.
We're not going to quit. We're going to find him.
Well, it's the deed restrictions and covenants that matters. That's what's registered with the state. Have you researched those and determined that commercial entities, commercial facilities are allowed within that property that's deeded under those restrictions?
And we're still trying to get the regulations. We do know that a facility like this was operating based on what our neighbors have said. There's also another company that is a tree service, and there was a in-home daycare. So the neighbors that are around us, when we shared with them what we were doing, they had no concerns because there's several of our community members that are already operating service organizations within. So we'll continue to look for it. We can't find our rules, and we can't find our HOA president. So we'll continue to look for it.
And as far as the, like I said, we were supposed to have received a copy of the deed restrictions at closing, and that never happened. It's a very, I can tell you, it's a very inactive. The neighbor behind us was the past president, and several years ago, and he had no issues with the property being used for that, but he was unable to help us find the current president.
And he didn't have a copy, so he gave us the name of somebody across the street, and so we went to talk to them, and he's not the HOA president. They don't have a copy either. So.
Yeah, have you tried the Secretary of State's office? Because they file those with the Secretary of State.
We weren't aware of that, but we most definitely will do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we found that the neighbors that we had talked to, they liked the idea, and when we asked them if they were aware of anything, they said no, that they didn't think so because there were so many businesses out of the community already. So, but we definitely will do that before the 8th.
Arnold, would you address possibly the issue of this federal mandating of this use and how that would relate to, even if you had an active homeowners association?
Provided they meet the criteria and the qualifications under state law, they are permitted as a matter of right in any residentially zoned district. As concerns any deed restrictions, number one, they'd be recorded in the county to the extent they're in fact ever created, they would be recorded in the county. They as well may very well be preempted by the state law. But again, that would be a matter for enforcement by the HOA, not the city.
And in fact, we are aware of of the rules. There's a federal statute and a state statute that protect these types of facilities to a certain number of beds under the Fair Housing Act. But we would, I mean, we want to function within the HOA. I mean, that's our desire, is to function within the HOA.
Our neighbors liked the idea, so we don't find that's gonna be an issue, but we'll continue to.
Would you say it would be a fair characterization of your business plan there that you'll effectively operate in such a way that if a person didn't know that you were keeping elderly, that they would not be aware that this wasn't just another residential home?
By DAD's regulations, there can be no markings on the outside. It has to assume the appearance of the homes around it. It cannot stand out as a business or as a assisted living facility. It has to blend in with the rest of the neighborhood.
Catering trucks or whatever would not be parked out
That would
front
be
or?
us.
Here's my catering. Here's my.
I think I know the answer, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to surface that.
No,
for
Absolutely,
yeah.
yes,
There won't
no.
be any large deliveries. We are going to change the exterior only in one form. We're staying under the existing roof line, but we are gonna put in a circular drive for two reasons. One, because we hate going down, some of our streets. We live on Wilderness Trail, and so if somebody's having any type of event, you have to go to one lane. So we're gonna put in a circular drive for that, and also because the grandparents that we plan, or the parents that we plan on serving will more than likely have mobility issues, and so it will be for the convenience of them. So there will be no delivery. We'll buy our groceries at H-E-B and Sam's, just like we do now. And trash, which is something Aubrey asked us to address, they were talking about the same size of family that John and I grew up in. I grew up in an 8-member family and he had a 7. So it's no larger than that.
Other discussion, questions?
I don't have any questions for that, but I do have questions over here.
Sure.
So,
You don't want to just stay there though for a minute? Okay.
so if I can get this correct, they don't have to rezone anything because they're exempt from that. If they weren't, they would have to rezone. So this is zoned residential. In essence, they can have a commercial business there, but the federal law says that they can do this. So it's absolutely, really, we have no choice but to approve this.
We're just so our permitted use table has an S1, and below the permitted use table, the S1 has some specific criteria, which is in your compliance memo. And so what we're looking at is to make sure that, their parking is behind the front of the building, their trash is, hidden. Yeah, and so they comply with our requirements.
It's really not behind the building, though. It's to the side of the building. They've added a parking lot to the side of the building.
It's,
Still adequate, still meets the definition of behind the building.
they're gonna put the fence to screen it, and it's behind the front building line.
You good? Anybody else? Well, as a resident that has aging parents, and thank goodness they're in good health and still mobile and everything, but having gone through this with my grandparents and put them in a large facility, the thought of having some smaller venues is really attractive to me, and I appreciate what you're doing. I think you got a beautiful facility, and thank you for the fact that you have reached out to all the neighbors and done everything within your purview to make sure that everybody's feeling good about your business, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
That said, seeing no other discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye, show it to be unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8, consideration and possible action regarding a site plan amendment for Town Square located at 3700 FM 528, a shared parking proposal. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve and second, and that takes us to our discussion. Aubrey, you want to start us out again?
Yes, sir. This is a new building that's recently been constructed over on 528, and their original site the owner bought the existing strip center and then built the new building. It was a pretty tight property as far as parking goes. So at the time we did the original site plan, the second floor of the building was just gonna be storage. So that they, you know, because they didn't have the parking spaces to support the occupancy on that second floor. Since they've, finished the building, the adjacent property was purchased by a new owner, and the owner of Town Square has been able to work out a proposed parking agreement with that adjacent owner. So the plan that you have, we calculated the parking requirements for the existing building next door, which would be 8 parking spaces. They have 12 spaces existing, so basically 4 extra. And then the owner of Town Square is proposing to construct an additional 11 parking spaces abutting his property. There will also be additional parking signs posted, near the driveway entrances so that there's direction that that parking is for this facility. And they are gonna put a sidewalk to connect the sidewalks, connect the adjacent properties with the sidewalk. And we do have an applicant here to answer any questions for that as well.
I think my question is directed to Arnold. We've talked a little bit in the past about getting our reciprocal parking agreements to a little bit more durable level than just a throwaway paper, that we can walk away from with impunity after the fact. How would you characterize this compared to what we've had in the past?
Sure. Compared to some that I've seen in the past, this actually has some features that make it more of a durable nature, if you will. It seems to be more in line with the type of easement document that you'd want to have recorded with the county that would put all future owners on notice of the existence of these rights and that they would continue in perpetuity. So I feel fairly good about the form that's been presented. So.
This document would be recorded at the county. They would execute it and record it. We just didn't have them do it for this meeting because there was no sense in doing it if it wasn't approved. And so we just had them give us the draft, and then we'll make sure that it's executed.
And this could even maybe be something that would be a template we might want to consider in the future as we think about tighten that just a little bit. Because I think we all recognize the need for parking. I was talking with John and Chris before, and they're really excited about the potential of some new downtown restaurants and everything, but one of their concerns is make sure that there's good parking long-term so that that's a healthy complex, and a more durable reciprocal parking agreement that guarantees that you don't just leave it later is part and parcel of that. Any questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye. I show it to be unanimous. Item 9, consideration of possible action regarding proposed amendments to Appendix C, Ordinance Section 8 in Downtown District and Architectural Standards. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Arby, start us out again, please.
Actually, we don't have an official draft of a change on this. I guess I should have just put discussion item, but I didn't want to limit us. So,
Okay.
Downtown fenestration. So we've had somewhat of a recurring issue with our fenestration requirements in the downtown district. Currently, the fenestration is defined as openings in a facade of a building or a side, such as doors and windows. In the downtown district only, the requirement is 40% fenestration on the ground floor facing any right-of-way. So if you were on a corner, both sides of your building would have to be 40%. And then 25% on any upper floors and sides of the building not facing a right-of-way. So Tanos is a good example of a recent building that has 25% on the back of the building. We have had some other several buildings that have been built in the downtown that have struggled with this, and I'll give you a few examples. One of the very first ones we had was 201 South Friendswood, the coffee shop. The drive-through is on the right-of-way side of the building, and so we had to, really work with them to try to figure out, what to do on that one. A lot of times the use, it's the type of use, how they use that building inside. Sometimes they need blank walls or, things like that, and so providing those doors and windows are a challenge. Another one was 1003 South Friendswood Drive, which is Texas Gulf Bank. A bank has security issues. So on the back of their building, they have faux windows, and they did a good job doing faux windows. They actually have shutters over them, and you really can't tell, that those are faux windows. 111 South Friendswood Drive, McAdams Office Park, next door to the church, the all-white building, has faux windows on the back of it. They had medical uses that might keep like pharmaceuticals in their building, and so there's a security issue as well, with those kind of things. And then our city building, 416 South Friendswood Drive, the library. Typically a library, the bookshelves line the walls, and so the architect had a real hard time meeting those requirements on our library addition. So there are good things about the fenestration requirements. It makes buildings more interesting to walk, by them. You would rather walk and look in a window than look at a blank wall. They do, windows influence the social character of public spaces. The downtown, we do, want it to be a walkable area with more retail, but right now, we're getting more office buildings and things like that. The windows and doors also affect the welcoming, how welcoming the building is and its relationship to other, buildings next to it. And windows also provide eyes on the street and inhibit crime as well. So there are some good things, but it's challenging. Some other challenges are that requiring those windows is conflicting with our energy code requirements. When a new building is built, they have to hire an inspector to come in and do a rating on the inside of the building as to the energy efficiency. And it's not that they can't meet them, but the quality of windows and the glazing that they have to put on is more expensive. We had a recent DRC, a possible new development that is contemplating going for a variance for the fenestration on the back of their buildings. They are adjacent, both of their buildings are gonna back up to single-family residential zoning. And it's a 25% fenestration requirement on the back of the buildings, and they're retail strip centers. And so they're talking about going for a variance to not have to do that fenestration. So, like I said, it's a recurring issue. We thought we needed to revisit it. I don't know, if we want to do away with it completely, if we want to maybe think of some other architectural elements such as columns or arches, per so many feet, if we just want to leave it up to property owners and be, less burdensome on property owners, or, possibly reducing the requirement some and not requiring the fenestration on the backs of the buildings and things like that, so.
What's typical in a zone outside of the downtown district?
We do not have fenestration requirements in any other district. Typically, fenestration requirements are or more typical with form-based codes, where you outline the width of the street, your medians, your landscaping, your sidewalks, and then you regulate the form of your buildings as well. And usually that's when you have form-based codes. But this is kind of one piece of a form-based code, just kind of with nothing else to go with it, I guess.
And I asked Aubrey to put this on here because what we're really trying to do is get a little bit ahead. We have some really amazing buildings being proposed for downtown. We've had one or two just recently, or just one recently. We've got some more that are going to come in that same train. And so we're trying to look ahead and say, how can we facilitate and maybe get ahead of the game here a little bit and put ourselves in a position to be helpful before we actually have a plat in front of us or a building. That said, I think for myself, I mean, I look at the one on the corner of Whispering Pines, and those faux windows on the back, because they're so prominent coming from the, the Clear Lake area on Whispering Pines, I think that that's a place where I'm really glad we have this ordinance. And then I look at, some of the other spots and maybe some of the buildings that are going to be coming to us, and it's less important. I'm wondering if, like you said, we might be able to find some kind of middle ground where the P&Z has purview to flex, and I know we've had some of that kind of flexible language in the past. So that's kind of where I'm at on this. What's everybody else thinking? Greg?
I guess my question is what's wrong with leaving it the way it is and then letting them go for a variance? You go and you change this, and then, it's a little unfair to everybody else that's had to go spend their money to put the fenestration in, and now we relax the requirements for other folks. I see nothing wrong with providing good judgment in looking at this on a building-by-building basis and maybe allowing a variance where it makes sense. But, we can move the donkey all around here, and people are going to wonder where to pin the tail on it.
My remembrance of the variance committee, ZBOA, is that one of the things that they cannot give a variance for is economic hardship. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
So that, is part of it. I don't know on the aesthetic side, I don't know that it addresses that on the aesthetic side.
There has to be some sort of hardship. It's typically, the shape of the property, in this case, abutting residential property, they're, a use maybe, how you use the inside of the building, if it was, a security issue or something like that. Going through the variance process, I mean, some people just don't want to mess with that, and we've had some pushback of people changing to downtown district zoning because they don't want to mess, with going for a variance for that.
And I think that's the tension.
I mean, it's definitely,
Yeah.
it is a relief valve, but it's just another step or a hurdle.
That's the tension for me, is all the goods that we get out of the downtown, somebody electing to go to the downtown standards, possibly over a couple of rear windows, we lose all those front improvements that we really know we're gonna be able to see for something that is in back, so. Tony, you've got an eye for this. What's your thoughts?
I really didn't come prepared
Okay.
for discussion on this subject. I apologize.
That's all right.
Is this language original to the downtown district zoning?
It has been, it's been changed a couple of times. I would have to go back and research, exactly what was changed, but it.
Registration in particular?
Yes, we added the allowance for faux windows, was the most recent change that we made to it. There was another, like number 4 in here that,
In section C?
yeah,
Or
4B.
section B?
Yes, there was another number 4 that I can't remember. I'd have to do research and go back and look and see what it said. It was something about if you were a budding downtown district, that you couldn't have windows. Which I think about like the old Texas like true Texas downtown buildings, your brick buildings. If you think about 2 buildings abutting each other, they didn't have windows. If they were, next to each other, there were no windows. And then you had your retail frontages that had big display windows. And then you had your second floor, with possible residential living up on the second floor and up. So that's kind of where I think this originated from, was those type of brick buildings, that concept. but we're getting freestanding, you know, individual buildings in downtown. So it's, I think, just more difficult.
And in fairness, the R factor that they're, you know, the E rating that these buildings have to hit to meet, I guess, federal standards actually now, you know, a faux window addresses that. I mean, you know, effectively, you do not have a window there that's losing energy. You've got some kind of louvers on it or whatever. Drive past the one on the hard corner here of Whispering Pines and you'll see, you know, that, so they're able to fully get their E value out of it. But, you know, it's like those louvers on top of the building a few weeks ago. I mean, you know, the guy was gonna spend $120,000 on some stainless steel louvers up there that we could make a change and give him a EFS louver that was 40 grand, you know, and I thought that was a good trade-off, so. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, so I have a couple questions and a comment. So has this deterred any potential developers from developing a site downtown that you know of? You can give us evidence, proof?
We do have one potential, it's a new development that's coming in. The fenestration requirements has been the one reason why they do not want to change to downtown. And that's one individual property.
One's a lot.
Yeah. And it's their use. I mean, what's the event center? The inside of the building, you know, for an event center, you need a big open space to be able to rearrange tables. And then so your storage building or storage areas and restrooms, you know, are going to be along the outside walls, most likely. So again, it's another use, you know, that
Yep.
is struggling with that.
Did we grant a variance for the, one of these Masons Lodge or something like that on the fenestration?
They actually changed their zoning to PUD for some other requirements, but that was one of the things, was the fenestration, because the Masons.
So
don't
we're
have windows.
constantly granting variances and it's an issue with potential developer, at least one.
Yeah, I forgot about the Mason Lodge. That was another one, so.
Okay.
I think Park Plaza and Tanos are probably the only two that have gone in and like met all the requirements and not had issues.
What would y'all think if we tonight just asked staff and legal to generate some language that would soften this and maybe give us a little bit of flex so that we could look at these things on an individual basis and we wouldn't just be handcuffed to that? Would y'all be open to that? Okay. Everybody good with looking at some language at least?
I guess I just have one concern that every time we have somebody come in and they go, I can't meet all your requirements, I don't think we ought to go a la carte and say, okay, we'll rewrite the requirements. You know, the requirements are the requirements, and if they have good justification for not meeting those requirements, then I think you should grant a variance, the Masonic Lodge being a good example of that. But, you know, you got to have a stable baseline out there, and people need to know what the expectations are. And, you know, it's not cheap to build in the downtown district, but I don't think that's what we're looking for is cheap. I think we're looking for something nice down there. And, again, I think we need to make sure that our ordinances are as stable as they can be.
Disagree with that.
Yeah, I would agree. And like I said, I don't think we, you know, would have brought it to y'all's attention if it wasn't a recurring issue. I mean, like I said, it's been coming up, you know, over and over again. And, you know, maybe we keep the 40% on the front of the building, but just remove that 25%, you know, on the backs of the building that doesn't face a right-of-way. So we can bring some options back and kind of examine the downtown properties and see, you know, evaluate them and see where we might have potential issues.
If we wanted to, well, it was to basically approve as written, item 9, consideration possible action regarding proposed amendments to zoning C ordinances. Does that get you there to?
Well, if you want something consistent with your comments to have staff review, then just go ahead and amend the motion to have it brought back after staff review.
Okay. Forgot who made our motion. Was it correct? Did you make it?
Can I have, throw one other thing in there real quick? One other idea that was mentioned was allowing hardy plank or cement fiberboard back in the downtown district. It's been mentioned a couple of times. And so I don't know if y'all want to have some discussion about that as well. We removed that requirement a couple of years ago, and it's just masonry, stone, stucco, glass. So just something to consider as well.
Does that get us to overload, or do y'all want to take this one at a time? Okay, I think that's going to be overload, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to amend the original motion to approve by saying we'll take this up for consideration after staff recommendation of some additional language.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Table it, can't we make a motion to table, wouldn't that be the same thing?
No, because you're tabling the original motion, which is to approve the language. So we have to amend the motion.
You went to the class.
I went to the class.
We're in trouble now. Okay, so we've got a motion to amend and include language, waiting for language from staff that reflects flexibility in this requirement. And I've got a second. All those in favor say aye. Show it to be unanimous. Item 10, update from the subcommittee regarding a possible ordinance amendment and recommendation to City Council regarding whether or not to require a specific use permit for retail uses 100,000 square feet or larger. After reading this report, I really want to make sure we hear from our group. But Aubrey, you want to start us out a little bit? Just give us the skeleton of it.
Yes, sir. We had our subcommittee meeting. It was Craig, Sally, and Rhonda and myself. And basically, we took the city council AI memo and the items that were outlined on that memo and went through our city ordinances and identified the items that were already addressed in our ordinances, and then separated, we have a list of items already addressed and then outstanding items. So the report that you were given separates those items. The subcommittee also established a process to address this issue. So, and just for the record, this is a consideration to require a specific use permit for retail uses that are 100,000 square feet or larger. So the 4 steps that the subcommittee decided was.
Tell you what, you want to hold there and let's let our committee give us those since they generated them?
Sure.
I just like these so much that I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. Go ahead, Craig.
Horse's mouth? You didn't go to the class. Okay. Again, Aubrey gave us a lot of help on this, but the specific process that we've established for this is it's got many, many steps to it. And then the first part, of course, is to go through and make a comparison of what was in the memo from Rocky to what was already in the ordinances, and then the items, the delta to that, the change from that, were items that needed to be addressed, and then we're going to do a gap analysis on that and figure out how we would treat those items. There were several reviews that we wanted to go through as the third part of this step, reviewing some of our gaps with the CEDC, with staff legal, and also get some input from developers on this as well. And there's several things that are out there that we need to review and understand well, like the 528 corridor plan, the Vision 2020, and all that, and how that appends itself to this. And then I think in the end, we're going to come up with a series of recommendations on what we should do. And it's not going to be go do this. It's going to be option 1 is, option 2 is, option 3 is, or however many options there are, because I don't think from our initial review of this that we may need a new ordinance. It could be just appending something to an existing ordinance, so it's a lot less work. But then we'll put that up to the commission as a whole for review and approval. And as we go through this process, each step of the way, which we think is going to take about 5 months if we follow, we're all volunteers, we're meeting about once a month to go work on this. We follow that process and do our homework in between meetings, and then bring that completed product back to this group and get their buy-in that, okay, you've got there, you've done that, you've understood it well, and we agree with the result, and then we're going to move on to the next step. So we're not always reaching back into, well, what about the floodplain? What about this? What about that? That's going to be behind us. Okay.
Ron, do you have something to add to that?
No, I think Craig's done a good job of summarizing it, and I think the report, lays out what we talked about in terms of the steps in the process and how we want to manage through the information, understanding the gaps, and following through any recommendations in an option sort of format.
And David, for tonight, what we would like to go through is what already exists based on the initial request that we got from Rocky, and there's a lot of stuff that already exists, and I would ask Aubrey to go through that for us and just point it out, and then by default, you'll see what doesn't exist.
Rich, you
Just a quick, obvious question. Is 5 months gonna work?
from what standpoint?
I thought we were supposed to do something pretty quick.
Well, we were asked to, just a little historical perspective here. I know most of you probably weren't around in 1984 when Friendswood adopted its planning and zoning ordinances, but effectively we did not have zoning at that time, and we just went out and grabbed another city's ordinances and just said, these are ours, and we inserted them, and then we spent basically the next 20 years, modifying. Well, we still are doing it, And so I guess what we've kind of learned over that long historical period is that when you go too fast, you end up potentially laying on a whole lot of layers that have unintended consequences of legislation and what have you. So the thought here is that if we go slowly and we pair this thing carefully, that when we just lay on just enough to achieve what we believe to be the city's objections, but not so much that we're then spending the next decade pulling them back. Does that make sense?
And Dave, one of the things that Rocky said, Rocky took the time constraint off when at our last meeting and said we still want it done, but the timing is not critical. And one of the things that I left out that's really, really very important is the staff went through and looked at all of the sites in the city that could potentially be used for a 100K square foot building or larger. And they've drawn all those out on a map. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there's 24 potential sites, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And some of those would require rezoning to get them into commercial retail, but there are 24 potential sites. So it's a large number. Most of them are, a lot of them are out on the 528 corridor. And so it's something that we should pay attention to.
You good, Rich?
Yep.
Tony?
It's good.
Okay. Well, that said, then, Aubrey, if you'd like to start a discussion then in regards to the first part that you mentioned that we want to look at tonight, we'll discuss that.
Okay.
Just one thing I would like to say. In the 9 years I've been here, this is the finest launch in terms of detailed thought and consideration of a subcommittee I've ever seen. So good work, guys. Really looking forward to this. Go ahead.
All right, so step one was evaluation. And so I'll just go down the list. Item number one was, and this was the criteria laid out by Councilman Rocky. So this change shall exempt only buildings that currently exist or have been vested before the change of zoning. Current buildings that are below the size limit but are later expanded should be covered under this ordinance. If we made a change, the ordinance would become effective the day it was adopted by City Council. Vesting would apply, but vesting is defined by state law and doesn't need to be further defined in our ordinances. And then once the ordinance is adopted, it would apply to future expansions. And we do have our section 6 that addresses non-conforming uses, structures, and lots. So item number 2 on the list was that for retail buildings exceeding 100,000 square feet, consider language that places requirements on parking, water runoff, and impervious pavement. In particular, consider language that limits stormwater runoff going to existing stormwater capacity. Our parking requirements are already existing. They're based on the type of use, the number of parking spaces, parking lot guidelines, driveway widths, aisle widths, and sample layouts are all included in our design criteria manual. Some additional parking requirements are in Appendix C of our zoning ordinance, and the attachment lays out the specific references to all the parking and landscaping requirements in the zoning ordinance. And then commercial sites greater, so addressing stormwater runoff. Commercial sites greater than 5 acres are required to provide on-site detention. Post-developed runoff must be the same as pre-developed runoff. So basically, a new development has to detain their water and let it, it has to be restricted, and the flow is the same as their pre-developed flow. So that's already all in our design criteria manual.
And Aubrey, just a little clarification there too, is that the reason why that 5 acres is important, you stated to us that it takes at least 8 acres in order to build one of these 100K square foot buildings.
Correct. And the map that we did, actually, I put a few 9-point-something acre properties on there, but Mo suggested that we just do 10 acres. HEB's site is a little crowded, and I can't remember the acreage on theirs. It's been a week since I looked at that. But anyway, so I was comparing it to a few that we had existing, and 10 acres actually, would be a good size for that. So our design criteria manual addresses storm drainage, and that specific requirement is cited. Number 3, if possible, link this ordinance to existing city ordinances for building requirements. Current adopted building and fire codes would apply to any new building that's built in the city. Our the Friendswood Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, adopts our building codes and fire codes. And number 2 of that, any property fronting or within 300 feet of a thoroughfare is subject to the Community Overlay District requirements, and those requirements are laid out in the zoning ordinance. Number 4, to consider language for qualifying projects to require mandatory community impact analysis to be paid by the developer. The analysis should include environment impacts, community impacts, impact to city-provided services, traffic impact, lighting, landscaping, and impact to surrounding property values. The impact analysis to be provided prior to the approval of the SUP by the city. And so the bold items in your report are items that are already addressed. So water and sewer, we charge impact fees based on the meter size. That is used to go into a capital recovery fee to help expand our water and sewer systems. A traffic impact analysis is already required if you're anticipating 5,000 trips or more per day. Lighting is addressed. We require a photometric survey as part of a site plan approval, and we have requirements for that in the zoning ordinance. And then obviously landscaping requirements are in the zoning ordinance as well. So there were 5 criteria that were not that are not currently addressed, And 3 of those would be changes that would be made if we were to require a specific use permit. So number 5 was the cutoff size of 100 square feet can be adjusted by the planning and zoning recommendation of a different size requirement is more effective. So 100,000 square feet was basically up for discussion. The ordinance shall have no effect on the zoning of property for any other use other than large retail establishments, which if we were to propose a change to an ordinance, we would be sure to include all types of, retail. It could include electronic stores, toy stores, hardware stores, general merchandise stores, so it's not just, one type of retail. To structure the ordinance such that an SUP and site plan approval is required for a single owner who may construct multiple buildings at a site in which the total square footage of all buildings exceeds 100,000 square feet for a single tenant. Basically, I think Steve Rocky had found an instance where a building was split into 2 but connected by a breezeway or something to try to get around the requirement. So he just wanted to avoid that. Consider language for qualifying projects to require mandatory community impact analysis to be paid by the developer. So the environmental impact, community impact, and impact to surrounding property values, we don't have a requirement for that currently. The subcommittee had questions, if we were to require that, who would pay for it, who would do it, those kind of things.
And I think the backup document called for all those expenses to be borne by the developer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. I think it was more the question of, like, would the city select a company that the developer would have to pay for, or would the developer, you can one side any
The
report.
the toolkit backup data basically said that the city would select and the developer would pay.
Okay, very good. And then the last one, to consider expanding the timing and number of community comment periods required for a single-tenant retail building that exceeds 100,000 square feet. Consider that comment can be accepted through social media. So if we were to require a specific use permit, the process for that is a joint public hearing with City Council and Planning and Zoning, a P&Z recommendation, and then 2 readings with council. And so he was just, saying to expand comment periods on that, so. And then the map was the other part of that identified the 24 properties.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
the map? And if this is appropriate for our committee, just let me know and we'll do it there, but the 24 lots identified, I count 8 and maybe 9, because one of them is really strange, that are already zoned commercial. So they could do whatever they wanted to do today. The other, however many that is, require rezoning. So in that rezoning process, and I guess I want to make sure that I fully understand what this body or city council would be able to do because they do require rezoning, that level of limitation on this kind of commercial development, right? It's another restriction.
Yes, but when you do a straight-out rezoning from single-family residential to commercial,
Right.
you don't have to provide specific plans. You can just request this rezoning,
Okay.
straight out. So you're not getting site
You
plans.
don't get the information as to
Right,
why.
right.
Okay.
And I think you can see just from our discussion tonight, this is probably the most complex thing that we've addressed in some time. Even as it was proposed, for instance, if you were looking at a proposal like this with a view of, say, preventing a 150,000 square foot target from coming to the city of Friendswood, we were kind of surprised immediately. We had a large grocery store that was 120,000 square feet. And they were like, well, if y'all do that, then we might not come. So somebody that we want versus somebody we don't, this is complicated, and we want to be real careful and make sure we don't end up with something that has created a backside problem that we didn't anticipate. And I think just our little discussion tonight shows how reasonable it is that we take this very slow and cautiously. And Chairman of our subcommittee, Craig, I wish you would extend to Councilman Rocky our appreciation for him pulling back from a very tight time frame for us to do this, so that we really have thought about it and get it right.
And David, in the overall scheme of this thing, we do intend to coordinate with a bunch of people and get a lot of input. My only concern at this point is that when we get to the end, you know, we're going to have a series of recommendations, and one of the recommendations is probably going to be, you know, not to have a specific ordinance based on 100,000 square feet or anything like that. So that could be one of the things that could come up. And I know that there are people on council that have probably set some expectations. And I'm struggling with the 100K number myself. You know, it kind of came down with some pixie dust, and there it is. And, you know, I think still that we need to talk to others, because we need to really understand, talking to the Chamber of Commerce, all these kind of people, we really need to understand, you know, what type of stores are looking at us, and where can they go. And if you take a look at the 528 plan, which I think is extremely enlightening, we don't have any infrastructure anyhow to build any of these stores. Yeah, and so, you know, without the infrastructure and then putting all these limitations in there, we need to really watch whether or not we're going to be viewed as a business-friendly town. And if someone's going to have to pay for, you know, a couple $1 million to extend the septic system out and the water system out to the property, and then turn around and spend another $50,000 or whatever on an environmental impact study, and then politicize their project through the process rather than going administratively through the city planning staff, you know, this could be disastrous. So we're going to have to be very, very careful in what we end up with, and I think there'll be a series of recommendations, 1, 2, or 3, maybe even 4, as to what to do.
Thank you. Well, one confidence I have is that, one, we've got some of our best minds on this from our commission. Secondly, that they are going to produce a very detailed, well-thought-out document, and they're going to hand it to a capable council that are reasonable people that will look at everything that we take to them and make a well-rounded judgment from y'all's efforts. So I think we're heading in a good direction. That said, let's move forward then with item 11, consideration and possible action regarding future Planning and Zoning Commission meeting dates. Arbery?
Our next regular meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 3rd. We do have some items with City Council on Monday, March 7th. So if we want to entertain the idea of moving our March 3rd meeting to March 7th. And then our second regular meeting in March is March 17th.
And do we know what our agenda might look like on that date as to how heavy or?
For the 7th?
The move that you're contemplating moving the 3rd to the 7th, right?
Yes.
And so, you know, we try not to overlap with them on nights that we look to be heavy as to what we're dealing with?
Yeah, it would only be the items that are with council. So we have a zone change, we have an easement abandonment, and we actually will have the two fire station plans for the city. We have an addition going on Fire Station 4 and a new building, which they're on kind of a time crunch, so.
And those are like first readings or?
They're just site plans.
Just site, okay.
Yeah. So, but other than that, we'll just have the items that we meet with council that we need to get recommendations back down to them.
Okay. Does everybody feel good with that?
So we're moving, everything's gonna be on the 7th.
Yeah. Yeah, the third, if we have a motion and a second and a vote to move the third meeting to the 7th.
And the second meeting is the 17th, you said?
Yes.
Okay, I'll move that we move the March 3rd meeting to the same night as council on March the 7th.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Sure. Tony, were you?
I prefer the third.
Okay. All right. Those opposed, so we've got, oh, well, which one did you vote for?
I voted, you said opposed, so I wrote.
Okay, okay, all right, good. I want to make sure and get that right down to council. We've taken them a wrong count before, and it doesn't sit well. Okay. And communications from the commission. Craig, do you have anything additional for us?
Nothing for me.
No, just to let you know, I did go to training last week. It was very insightful. For those of you who are wondering, it was parliamentary procedure training. And I'm sorry I forgot to bring the cheat sheet, so I'll make you guys a copy of some of the information and anyway, so we can stay in line.
Well, we might even switch you out, because Sally always sits here and nudges me when I'm getting it wrong, and now that we have somebody that's even more up to speed than her. All right, reports. Jim, I know you're filling in for Steve tonight. Would you like to come speak to us?
Appreciate all the work y'all do. It's a lot of detailed work, and I appreciate y'all doing it.
Right back at you. Thank you. Aubrey?
The land use conference is coming up in Austin, March 25th, and then 26th, 27th. I put the flyers on your computers tonight. If anybody's interested in going, the early registration deadline, which saves us some money, is March 18th, and the hotels around there do book up quick. So if you know you want to go, let me know. So the sooner we book some hotels, the better, and we'll get that going. And just want to thank Rhonda for going to the parliamentary procedure training. So.
Okay. We stand adjourned.